everyone. Can you hear me okay? It's not a very big room, so I can just shout if not. Thank you so much for joining us today at beautiful Leeds Library. It's lovely to be surrounded by books here. And thank you, of course, to wonderful Mayor Tracy Brabin taking the time to be with us. What we know is going to be a fascinating keynote and discussion on how culture can shape our economy and our society for the better. I'm Annabelle Smith. I'm Director of Place and Practice at the National Economics Think Tank Centre for Progressive Policy. And we're committed to delivering inclusive growth. So we believe that economic growth is very much a force for good. It's essential for raising living standards and can and should be delivered in line with the race to net zero. But the default trickle-down, grow now, redistribute later model of economic growth simply isn't working. Instead, we need a model of growth that unlocks the productivity and potential of all people and all places. And through our Inclusive Growth Network, we're working directly with 14 of the most innovative, forward-thinking local and combined authorities across the UK, including here in Leeds with the Combined Authority and Leeds City Council, to help translate inclusive growth from theory into practice in a way that meaningfully, tangibly improves the lives of communities. We believe that culture is absolutely pivotal to this agenda. So that's why we recently published our report, Culture and Creative Industries, a Catalyst for Inclusive Growth, of which there are a few copies scattered around in the audience. I did ask for more, but I was told that that wasn't very in line with our environmental sustainability commitments, but there are some. It's also on our website, inclusivegrowthnetwork.org, so do take a look. The report was born out of a recognition that the sector, from music to broadcasting to the nighttime economy to grassroots initiatives, very much has been overlooked, I suppose, by policymakers at the centre, both economically and in terms of the impact on our well-being and our happiness. As a lever for economic growth, it's absolutely pivotal, not just growth in a single corner of the country or in our major cities like Leeds, but across every single part of the country. Culture contributes £160 billion to the economy, and we're also one of the top 5 exporters of cultural services globally. But the creative industries remain stubbornly concentrated geographically, with London and the South East home to 54% of employment, 62% of businesses, and 74% of economic output. And the diversity and social mobility crisis in the creative industries, as we know, is worse than in many other sectors and professional roles. I got told something the other day that you're more likely to be a successful judge or barrister than you are to have a successful career as a creative in the UK at the moment, which is just astounding. But we know that none of these things are inevitable. We know that. So with the right support and focus, we've got a golden opportunity now to nurture and grow cultural clusters, it's hard to say, across the country, building on local assets to develop stronger economies and connect people from all backgrounds to high quality, fulfilling job opportunities. And in Mayor Brabin, we have a politician who not only understands this in theory better than anybody, but who's actually working hard to make this ambition a reality in West Yorkshire. Placing culture at the heart of her inclusive growth ambitions for the region, with initiatives like You Can Make It Here, programme of support for the creative industries, and my personal favourite, the Mayor's Screen Diversity Programme, which I'm sure you'll tell us a little bit more about, Tracy. It's no wonder that West Yorkshire has the fastest growing creative industries sector outside of London. And with a whole host of exciting developments, not least record label EMI establishing itself here in Leeds, and the forthcoming Brixton North being planned in Bradford, which of course will be City of Culture for 2025. It's a really exciting moment for West Yorkshire in this agenda. So I'm delighted to welcome Tracy to the stage for her keynote. And after that, we'll do a Q&A and there'll be opportunities for you to ask your questions as well. Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, great to see you all, folks. Thanks ever so much for coming out. Isn't this the most amazing venue? I mean, it's just fantastic. We were here the other week with my with my Culture and Sport Heritage Committee. And I got to handle a book from 1483. I mean, what the heck? I didn't need gloves. I didn't quite know what was going on. But really, what an amazing resource for our region. And I'm hugely proud of what they achieve in such a tiny space. And I know there's massive ambitions to expand a brand new side of the library and just really support them in their ambitions. And thank you for hosting tonight. So, as was said, when I became your mayor, I did put the creative industries very much front and centre of my plans. I think we were the first mayoral combined authority to actually do that, to make sure that we had that culture committee, we had the delegations, we had the investment pipeline. And, you know, as an actor and a writer, having 3 decades as a freelancer in the creative industries, I knew the opportunity for our region was boundless. And, you know, being able to travel the world as an actor, working with amazing people, coming from a council estate in Batley, I just knew that with the right leadership and with money and with partners, and using the soft power of the mayor, that we could really make a difference, because I know how transformative the creative industries can be. Because we all know, and it's why we're here, that culture is not just a nice to have, is it? It's absolutely a vital economic asset. Now, here in West Yorkshire, as you've heard, we have the fastest growing creative sector outside of London, worth over £2 billion worth of GVA to our regional economy, and a cultural ecosystem that employs almost 50,000 people, with more graduates in art subjects than any other city outside of London, here in Leeds. I mean, isn't that something? All these creatives actually clustered here in Leeds, over in Production Park in Wakefield, and I think Jim's here, so thank you for coming. Their Academy of Live Technology, the UK's only live events production university centre, who've worked with the likes of Beyonce, Arctic Monkeys, Lady Gaga. I'm always trying to get tickets, and I'm always trying to sneak in, and they will never let me. But there is something to be said for Lady Gaga in an ex-mining village in Wakefield, isn't it? It is quite something. And also being able to work with Production Park, using their experience to roll out a similar offer at the Orange Box at the Peace Hall in Halifax, and saying to those young people that do the course in live music events that they will be guaranteed a job with Live Nation at the end of the course. I mean, that's quite life-changing. So many of the young people at Production Park actually don't finish their course because they get snapped up by visiting producers who say, "Come on, do you want to come on tour to North America, or do you want to stay here and finish your course?" They're like, no, I'm definitely going to North America. But an amazing company, really having an impact in our region. But also what matters is who gets these chances. Is it, as we know with the BAFTAs, those young people who've had the privilege, and what a gift their parents have given them, those privately educated youngsters who, you know, I think it was a couple of years ago, 74% of BAFTA winners went to a private school when only 7% of the population do. I mean, that says something, doesn't it? That actually those opportunities are being offered to only one group of young people. And talking to the BAFTAs, hands up who saw Samantha Morton's acceptance speech. Hands up, guys, come on. This is interactive. Okay, so those of you that saw it will have been as blown away as me. As a young girl, you know that she was placed in care. She grew up in a children's home, but she was spotted by Nottingham Theatre Workshop, which is an incredible talent factory in Nottingham. And she had gone on to the most extraordinary career and been given the highest award in our sector. But her humility and her call chimes absolutely with probably what you're all thinking as well, that culture is for all. And there is talent everywhere, but opportunity isn't evenly distributed. So I really do believe what she said when she said, as a working class kid at school, when the teacher trundled in the TV and put on Kes, she said, Seeing poverty and people like me, my life and my family on the screen, I recognise myself. See, representation matters. Honestly, I could not agree more. And as the only woman Metro Mayor in the country, come on women, step up. Representation really matters. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So we know that the jobs that we're doing, enabling young people to get into the sector from all backgrounds, is so important. I want to make sure that people know that culture in the creative industries is for everyone. And I really believe that everyone, wherever they grow up, whatever their parents do, should have access to culture and those creative job opportunities. Too often on visits as mayor, I speak to people who think it's not for them. They don't know anybody who's ever done it. They don't know how they'd even start. They think that drama schools are just RADA, and it's just a particular type of person that gets into those really high-end conservatoires. And as a woman from a northern working class background, you know, I sort of get it. Now, people didn't sneer at my accent, but when I was, one of my first jobs was in A Bit of a Do with David Jason. Anybody who's of my age will know that show. And I played Sandra, the clumsy waitress. And I had a line, I came in with a tray and I said, would anybody like a canap? And all the other actors, you're laughing because you get it. All the other actors were like, oh, that's so clever, Tracy. It's exactly what she'd say. I'm like, no idea what she'd because I'd never come across that word. And why would I? You know, I grew up in Batley. We don't have canaps or but I know that, and I also know how hard it is as a freelancer when you don't have family money. When you don't live in London in your family home and you can wait for opportunities, but you've got to pay the rent and you've got to pay every bill that comes through the door. I know how hard that is. And that's why one of the first things I did, I think it was in the first month, I had a meeting with Screen Yorkshire, and we started to roll out those Mayor's, we rebranded the Beyond Brontes as the Mayor's Screen Diversity Programme. And for those of you that don't know, it's kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, kids of colour, kids with a disability, the chance to learn new skills, get real life experience on film like Mission Impossible, Happy Valley, Gentleman Jack, all of them filmed in Yorkshire. And honestly, what an incredible scheme it is. We're into our third cohort. It was 5 times oversubscribed, with 62% of the participants of the last cohort female or non-binary, 43% identifying as having a disability, 38% from a Black Asian minority ethnic background. And guess what? 50% of that cohort ended up with a job in film and TV or went on to further education. I mean, it's a bit of a life changer for those who are furthest away. We know the added value of that to our region, but also we know, and I know when I was a writer, that ideas are everything. You know, Kay Mellor, I'm so sad that she's gone. Kay Mellor and Band of Gold, didn't that change the landscape? Working class women with northern accents on our telly in our house thinking, what the heck? That's Leeds. That sort of intellectual property is so important. Well, now we have it with Sally Wainwright, but she can't write everything. Rolam, obviously doing an amazing job. There's Duck Soup, brilliant company, independent company. You know, we have the IP of the Brontes. You know, we have artists and sculptors, Barbara Hepworth. We've got musicians, the Kaisers. I'm going to read this because I don't know who they are. Wedding present. Okay, I'm sure. Okay. And you know, we've got Burberry in Wakefield. We've got fantastic IP, but if you have the ideas and they come from working class voices set here, more likely than not, they will come here to film and they will bring the talent with them, and we will be able to nurture talent. So it's why I'm really pleased that the BBC are making AA Dance, South Asian detective series set in Bradford. We're able to run like a training school alongside. So we've got, you know, young people who's for the first time, they may be on a film set, but they're learning the skills. But because he set it in Bradford, they're filming in Bradford. So I need young people to tell their stories. And that's why I've tasked Screen Yorkshire with identifying how we can widen out the screen diversity programme to include writing. And I know that West Yorkshire Playhouse have been really helpful in that space. Also, seeing how our creatives and freelancers really did suffer during COVID. I mean, when I was the MP, I put out a call out to the creative sector on Twitter, as it was then. Can you tell me a story of how COVID's impacted your career? Honestly, I had not expected the tsunami into my inbox, nearly 4,000 replies. And I tried to read most of them. And honestly, what was really heartbreaking was some of them were my friends, people I'd worked with. They were selling their family house. They decided not to have another baby. They had to move in with their mum and dad. Their relationship was split, you know, all of these personal stories, because they were part of the 3 million excluded. Now, we managed to get SEISS backdated for a small cohort of people who could submit their self-assessments. But it was a tiny number of people who left the sector. They just couldn't make it work. We're trying to support freelancers coming back into the sector with the 2.3 million You Can Make It Here package. This is offering training for micro businesses, freelancers, improving accessibility, training, and grants for venues. But we also need people to be paid properly, which is why I'm really proud that a few months ago we launched our Fair Work Charter. So if you run a business, come in, the water is lovely, come and join our family of businesses, small, tiny businesses have signed up, big businesses who are going to pay or on a journey to pay the real living wage, but also offer progression, offer flexible working, offer opportunities to be part of a union. And you will get to be part of this family of businesses that want to do the right thing, because we know that in the creative industries, people are really more often than not underpaid and find it hard to pay their bills. Also, we're the first in the country to have a creative health system, working with the Integrated Care Board, and real leadership from Rob Webster in this space, where creatives can earn a living working in health and social prescribing, so they can stay in the sector. So dancers can work in care homes with people with dementia. Artists can work with people suffering from depression or anxiety and just stay in the sector, because it's always the second job you take that's so crap that makes you leave because you can't pay the bills. So we're trying our best working as a creative health system. We've also funded, as part of devolution of my powers of adult education, a BTEC in set development, a course that grew by 130% in 22-23. So set design. But set design is not just theatre, it's also dance, it's also film and TV. So I'm really pleased that that's really caught fire. Also, the number of learners entering arts, media and publishing courses with our support reached over 9,000, a significant rise over the previous 2 years. And it's why we've developed with Leeds Heritage Theatre and Grand Futures a resource for schools amplifying the different careers in the arts, because so many, I mean, my mum and dad were the same. You're going to be an actor or you're going to be maybe a director. They don't know the myriad of jobs, and particularly around visual effects. And certainly Production Park are doing an amazing job in virtual production, The Mandalorian, you know, all of that new technology and digital that is open to young people. And also it's about communities, isn't it? That's why I was really pleased my culture committee could fund or support Leeds Year of Music, Kirklees Year of Music, Leeds 2023, Kirklees Year of Music. We've got Culture Dale this year, Wakefield have a cultural year, and then the mighty Bradford City of Culture 2025. And honestly, the impact on communities is enormous, and Wakefield have done some great stats. 62% of Wakefield residents say being involved in cultural activities improves their quality of life, and that arts and culture improves their personal health and well-being. And we know that people choose somewhere to live because of a cultural offer, not because of a good school. I always thought it was the other way around. It's because they have something to do at the weekends and evenings, and they will choose that place to live and to settle. Also, we'll get to the last few. I'm not bragging, but I'm just so proud of these schemes, and I want you all to know about them. But the Mayor's Young Poet Laureate, working with Simon Armitage, almost every school in West Yorkshire took that poetry module and delivered that poetry module. We've got 2 extraordinary young poets have come out of that scheme, and they are delivering poems for the Convention of the North on what it means to be Northern. So I'm really interested to hear what they think their version of Northern is. But it also impacts, poetry impacts on oracy and confidence and an ability to sell an idea and to speak in public. So it's not just about poems, is it? It's about creating opportunities for young people to flourish. And only today I was at Leeds City College as part of Love Colleges Week. And it's like going back on the tools. And I was with a group of youngsters and they were workshopping something I'd written. And then one of them said, oh, you know, can you do a monologue? It's like, oh my goodness, dust off the acting chops. I was terrible, by the way. But I know there were 30 plus kids. They won't all be actors. They won't all be writers, but they'll be better paramedics and they'll be better CEOs and better teachers because of the confidence and the skills that course gave them. And so finally, we know that change is coming, don't we? That there's going to potentially be a new government. So I am hoping that the work we've done here in West Yorkshire really inspires Thangam Debonair, who hopefully will be our new culture minister, to be bold, to work with mayors, to deliver on the ground, but more than that, to work with you, because you know your communities, you can work with each other, collaborate, have great ideas, that then I can support, whether that's financially or with soft skills or amplification. But the government really understand this is how you get growth. You identify a growing sector, and it's absolutely growing in West Yorkshire, and you put money into a growing sector and it will grow faster. And certainly that has enabled us with all the years of culture adding to this. But we've got 17% uplift in creative, sport and heritage jobs in West Yorkshire up to last June, and it's only 6% in the UK, in the rest of the country. That's 3 times more jobs, and that's where I think leadership comes in. So hopefully, if I get re-elected, fingers crossed, May the 2nd, you know which box to cross, that I will be able to continue this work, because it's an absolute privilege to use my experience, to be able to use that as a superpower, to support all those young people and creatives that always feel they have to be somewhere else to achieve their dreams. So thank you, and I look forward to our conversation and questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. That was fantastic, incredibly compelling. And as a working class Northern woman myself, not just culture where you get those kind of biases. I mean, I remember being at Oxbridge as a working class kid from Blackburn and being told, are you not ashamed that you have to have a job? And are you not ashamed of where you're from? And are you not, why are you telling people that you've got a job while you're at university? As if that's something to be, you know, to be ashamed of and not a superpower to be proud of. So what an incredible thing to have the representation in Tracy that we have. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and then I'll take it over to the audience, because I'm sure you have far more eloquent questions on this than I do. Now, we're an economics think tank, as you know, so it's pretty unusual for an economics think tank to be putting an event on culture for precisely the reasons that you were saying, that it just is not valued or recognised enough as a real powerful lever, one of our key economic assets, one of our key export industries in the country. And even Jeremy Hunt has, you know, our Chancellor has recognised it as one of our top 5 levelling up sectors to focus on. We've got creative clusters, but still I think there's almost a bit of a sort of fear on the part of particularly, you know, policymakers in Whitehall around recognising culture. You've said, in terms of being bold and to invest in culture as a mayor, that if you invest in culture in the creative industries, you can make a success of local growth and levelling up. Can you unpack that a little bit further for us in terms of what are the potential sort of long-term benefits that you see in putting your money where your mouth is in terms of using your kind of investment levers, I suppose, on culture.
Thank you. Well, there's a number of elements. One is regeneration. Culture is a tool to regenerate communities, and regeneration means investment and pouring investment into an area. Skills, we will not be part of a growth success story unless we have a skilled workforce. And every business I go to, honestly, almost bar none, after they've said transport is terrible, I'm like, give us a minute, okay? They say we need a skilled workforce with soft skills. So looking at our creative sector, I know that that is a lever to ensure that our youngsters, after COVID, when they've stopped talking to each other or being able to articulate an idea or an argument or persuade someone, I think those skills is really, really important. And also, as I've said, when talking to international businesses on trade missions to North America or to India, I can say we are a region where you will be able to recruit because we have a great cultural life. But I think, to your point about Westminster and Whitehall, I absolutely don't think they get it, because they go to the ENO and they maybe go to Christmas concerts at St. Paul's, and then the ballet. You know, they may go and they have a cultural life, they do, but they don't see the way that it's transformation in communities and the way that it delivers small businesses, SMEs, the way that a dance company doesn't have to be the Royal Ballet. It can be something amazing in North Leeds that is going to empower young people to be leaders in their field. So building a workforce that is fit for the future, being able to have an environment that's attractive for businesses to come and settle and to invest, and to show leadership in a growing sector that is already growing, that has international reach. When Brexit has destroyed so much of what we loved about, you know, being European, our soft power around the world is our creative sector. I never understand the churn of ministers at DCMS. It is one of the most impactful jobs in Parliament because of that global reach. And I hope that with an incoming government, and I do feel it actually, you know, Keir Starmer does play an instrument. Is it the flute?
I don't know.
He plays it. As a young person, he played an instrument. Also, Thangam is a musician. And I do believe that they understand the power of devolution to identify regions where, for us, culture is a growth sector. In other regions, other mayoral combined authorities, it could be health and life sciences. You know, we have a strong health and life sciences sector, of course we do. But I think concentrating, making it our unique selling point, where people think, I want to be out of London, I'm a creative business, where shall I go? Nobody ever thinks about Manchester, they always think about us. And that is my mission. And that's how we grow an economy.
Not that there's any kind of rivalry or
No.
So you
Can I just say, both Andy Burnham and I are doing a charity Strictly Come Dancing for motor neuron disease. Rob Burrows, we're doing it in Blackpool. I'm just saying, I need to win.
be a welcome change from the
I win.
welcome change from the DJ battles that him and Steve do, right? So you touched on the potential incoming Labour government that we will hopefully see this year. Labour have put out a creative compact plan, which is about essentially making a statement of intent that we recognise how fundamental culture is as a lever to grow our economy. In times of economic stagnation, and where we have a situation where, you know, London has always, because of concentration of investment and concentration of power, has always been the engine of economic growth in our country. Obviously now we've got to a place where it's stagnating. Even London's productivity is stagnating because of how overheated it is. So you have local economies across, of course, cities and regions such as Leeds, that the economic development and the economic growth is significant. But they haven't set out exactly how this is going to happen, exactly how they're going to leverage devolution to make that happen. Now, as a previous Shadow Secretary of State for DCMS, what do you think that balance is between having that bold, ambitious, national level strategy that is very much about culture is a key export industry, it is putting the UK on the map internationally, which obviously is more important than ever, whilst also devolving as much of that as possible to regions? How do you kind of strike that balance? Because you've got unique experience in that area.
Well, as we know that there isn't much clarity about devolution and the creative sector. So you'll have seen both Greater Manchester and West Midlands have trailblazer deals. And there is a section on culture there, which talks about greater partnership working. And there's a lot to be said for that. There are arm's length bodies that deliver culture projects, research and development in the sector and so on. I think some are working better than others. Now, in my experience, working really closely with the Arts Council, and I'm not just saying it because Pete Massey is here, but together we have been able to really support projects that we're both interested in, that chime with our values and our expected outcomes for our region. One example is the Wow Barn. You know, we both put a bit of money into the Wow Barn that was sort of quite epic and transformational for a lot of women who took part. 300 women built a barn in 24 hours. If you've seen the film Witness, you know that the barn raising in the middle of the film with the Amish. It was 150 women who were experienced in construction and carpentry, 150 beginners. And the way that women spoke about that transformational experience and the absolute uptick in signing on for plumbing courses, carpentry courses at Leeds College of Construction, College of Building, was quite something. That partnership work is really working. I think we need greater clarity from an incoming government, how they see it working. But I think to say, well, mayors should have it all, just seems slightly tunnel vision, because of course we need a national strategy. You know, we are part of the solution to that overheated south, to your point, but of course we need those landmark organizations that put us on a global map. But I also do think, like the Poetry Centre, the National Poetry Centre that Simon Armitage and Ruth Pitt and others are trying to get across the line, you know, those things don't have to be in London. And they can be led by mayoral combined authorities to have that, like the Factory. How amazing is that as a venue and as an ambition for a region? But I think it's the jury is still out and it's still up for discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. And just one final quick one from me out of interest as an economist. You know, economists are obviously obsessed with measuring the value of absolutely everything and what's the economic value of everything. And I think part of why culture hasn't been taken seriously enough in economic policymakers is because it's not as straightforward as being able to see the cut across and the read across. But I know that in West Yorkshire, again, you've got some really, really innovative approaches to actually measuring what is the economic value. And I know that you've been partnering with the Centre for Cultural Value at the University of Leeds and the Leeds Cultural Evidence Centre to actually try and address some of those challenges. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the reason why we're doing it is because I need people to understand this is something tangible and real. And it's not just about creating jobs, but what else can we evidence? Because that nice to have, the first thing to go in on a spreadsheet, we have to have the evidence and the data. And if we have an incoming government that is data driven, then we need the data. And part of the agreement with the years of culture. And part of the pushback from the public could be, in a cost of living crisis, why are you spending millions on supporting years of culture? I need to have an answer to that. I need to show evidence that builds growth, or, you know, attracts more companies clustering in our region, more inward investment, more international interest. I need the evidence. So we have set about, and Beth, I don't know if Beth is here from my team. There you are. Beth is the queen of data, and she is helping me, and I'm really grateful that she's in our team. Evidence, how we roll over from years of culture, one into the next, because just think about this for a moment. Somebody that is volunteering at Leeds 2023, does it for a year, and then goes to Culturedale and is a junior producer or whatever, and then goes on to Bradford City of Culture and is a producer, and then goes to Channel 4 as a commissioner, or as somebody, you know, with a really lovely job. And then who knows, you know, goes on to run a, you know, Shine or a big production company. Where that is something we must be able to quantify, but also the impact on people's lives. How do we know that what you've seen and taken part in over this year of culture has had an impact on your well-being, on your you know, your sense of self, your confidence, your ambitions for yourself and your family? You know, as a business, has it made you more money? I need that data. And so really, really vital. If we're going to make an argument, and it's about, you know, it's always down to money, we have to make sure that the data stands up to that scrutiny. And isn't it just heartbreaking that local councils, Kirklees, for example, lost 60% of its budget since 2010. Of course, culture is going to be at the bottom of the list because it's all the statutory services before anything else. So mayors have a role to play for now to fill some of those gaps. But I'm hoping that we can have vision with a new government so that local authorities can also play their part in their communities.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I'll take a couple of questions for Tracy from the audience now. There isn't a mic going around, but it's quite an intimate room, so I'm sure you can raise your voices a bit. So if we've got any hands, I know that
I don't think my mic's, is my mic on? Oh, it is.
I know that people aren't shy and you've got lots of questions. So, lady over here.
Hi, yeah.
Lady, that's Abigail from Leeds 2023.
Right, it's interesting because it feels like DCMS is not the problem, it's the Treasury that's the problem in terms of state culture. And when you look at the impact of, say, Eurovision on Liverpool's economy, the data is there on what can be achieved in cultural creative industries. So I'm interested in why are economic policymakers not looking at that data already, and where's the role of mayors and cities who are investing in culture to have those conversations with Treasury? And we also know DCMS don't get, you know, their budgets get cut. It's Treasury that needs to be influenced.
I couldn't agree more, and especially when you have a prime minister that advised people during COVID to stop being ballet dancers and, you know, be teachers or coders. I mean, you know, they just don't get it. And then for some weird reason, now it's one of their 5 missions. So somebody somewhere has had a conversation with them about the evidence. And I'm just hoping there will be change in the Treasury. And, you know, Rachel Reeves, hopefully, will be the first ever female chancellor, and she's from Leeds, and she's amazing. And she absolutely gets it because she has seen the impact of Leeds 2023. Why don't they get it? Maybe some of you in this room will know more than me, because it did feel in Parliament like I was banging my head against a brick wall. It is a growth sector. It is about well-being, and we have very poor mental health, particularly amongst young people at the moment. We have no youth centres for them. Where is the creative offer for them? So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, actually, Abigail.
More economic think tanks.
More economic think tanks. Hands up who needs a more economic think tanks. I don't know. I think it is policymakers and it is about leadership. Because if I was in the Treasury, this would be a focus for me. Because I can see the economic outputs and the growth for our GDP. You know, the GDP offer for, if we had 50% of what they have in London, I mean, you've done the maths on that, haven't you? How much growth you would see in the country. We have an incoming government that focus on growth, growth, growth. If we can make the argument, this is how you get growth, hopefully we can be persuasive to Treasury.
Yeah, but I think that's a great point, Abigail, and that's why I'm trying to get CPP to be the first economic think tank that is saying, hey, this is a key growth sector. And it astounded me when I came into the policy world from local government, that it just isn't, it's a key growth sector. The numbers are there, the evidence is there. And I honestly think that policymakers and economists are just a bit scared of culture. That's genuinely the impression that I get. So we need to make it as mainstream and as evidence-based as possible. But yeah.
I think if you wrap it up in digital, it seems like everybody understands digital. And so like digital creativity, digital, just put digital in it.
I've got another question over here towards the back.
So much of a question, it's much more of an observation. I think the policymakers, etc., or people in decision making are still stuck in a measurement of what I call industrial past, which is 9 to 5, you measure it up, that's how the work, it's very robotic, that's how it was. Now we're more in a digital revolution space, which is why flexible work is so much better. We can work remotely, we can still deliver the results we need to deliver. So perhaps the way that it's actually been measured, it's measured in an old way, and actually they need to rethink the measure in the sense of, you know, for people to work, for people to express, and when they work, as long as the result gets delivered, is it really 9 to 5 that's needed? So it's just one of those thoughts that I've often had, you know, because I, you know, run an organisation and everyone works flexibly, they work according to the time they work, and they have a project to deliver, they get it delivered. That's the most important thing. It's not whether they've clocked in at 9 o'clock in the office or finished at 5 o'clock, because creative industries don't work 9 to 5. We serve the community when they, you know, the people when they need to be there. So I think there's something about the way that they're actually looking at this, still measured across industrial television paths, and actually they're not moving.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that argument. But also, there is a crisis in cities across the country because of COVID and flexible working. So we need culture more than ever to bring people into the city centre for a different reason than work. Families in particular, that's why I love Leeds Light Night. And there's an equivalent in Wakefield, and there's reasons why people go into the city centre. The Peace Hall in Halifax, people going into Halifax specifically because the Peace Hall is so fantastic and has events and music and, you know, literary moments and sculptures to look at and a cultural offer. I think it is more important than ever before, and also for tourism and also our hospitality sector. We need that cultural offer as something to stem the flow of people out of cities.
Yeah, and the importance of the nighttime economy as well. I'll take this lady over here and then.
I just like to say in response to that question about how we measure and what we measure, I think it's absolutely vital to show the impact of those big year events and the big events, but also things that just always appear, and the things that are kind of absolutely in the city, they're always here. And I think it's a sector we try and almost measure too much. We're trying to measure everything. We've got Arts Council reporting that wants this measure. We're trying to measure against our own things. And I think with the debating needs to be effective understanding what would help us make that argument. What is the economic measures that we should be looking at that would really help to drive that case? Because we can measure well-being, we are measuring well-being, we measure the health, we measure this, but I'm not sure we're getting to the kind of answer of what's the question that needs to be answered to make that case.
I think that's a very good point, actually. To identify a series of measurements that are uniform across a whole region for whoever is funding that particular project. I mean, there's something to be said for that. A simplification across our funding pots. Something to mull over. Pete Massey needs to reply to that.
You thought me from being the arts council to talk about simplification. No, I mean, just on this point about, I mean, actually, I sort of think the case is made, really. I get on the case is made. I think the issue is the frameworks with which the government judge large-scale investment by have not caught up with that. Yeah, so the Green Book, which is the document the government uses to assess various projects and investment, hasn't quite caught up. The Green Book does have a wellbeing section, but you can't use the wellbeing section against certain projects. So I think there needs to be a bit of a root and branch judgment by whoever comes into government next that the Green Book needs to look at, and we need to be working out ways in which the public good, the public benefit, be that health, be that subjective well-being, can be factored into some of those investment decisions, which by and large only end up investing in stuff in the southeast because that's where you get most bang for your buck.
And has the Arts Council prepared a paper for Rachel on that?
Well, I mean, we've been talking to Bang and the team,
Right.
Rachel, obviously. Darren Henley, our chief executive, is a massive fan of well-being as a measure, as an economic measure. So I can't believe it's not spoken to Bang.
If you've got something to share, I'd be very happy to look at it about how I can be helpful. Saying about the Green Book.
Yeah, great.
There we go. We're not just talking, we're solving problems.
It's just like long-term economic growth and for cultural education, in schools especially, you know, and whether, obviously it's a national issue, but whether that is something that could be addressed at kind of combined authority level.
I wish I had control over schools to some and their cultural offer, but I don't. They're creative, we know across the country, creative subjects falling off a cliff, dance, art,
Private schools,
you know, music. But there is a reason why those parents pay those eye-watering
Yeah.
sums, because it creates the whole person. They're not going to be creatives. They're going to be really confident young people going out into the world. So it is heartbreaking. And certainly, you know, Fiddler on the Roof, Heaven to White Grammar was one of my finest moments. But I could sing in a choir, and you know, I could direct a play, and we had a madrigal group. But all of that offer has been eroded because of cuts to budgets. So that's why the Young Poet Laureate, we're going to do it again because it was very impactful. But now we've got the model of delivering a program that we just then give to the teachers. We could have the young sculptor, the young writer, the young artist, and be able to deliver. And it wasn't massively expensive, being able to deliver something in schools that is additional. But we really need, you know, root and branch changed over to put the creative subjects at the heart. And if anybody lives near Gummersall, you have the most extraordinary primary school there, where at the heart of the school, in the centre, like the centre of a flower, is the art room. Every single class goes through the art room. Everything, history, you know, music, everything has an art perspective on it. It's quite something to behold. And those young people, when they did a presentation in Parliament, they were actually crying because they were afraid about going to secondary school and losing all this art. I just think, oh, if only I could change that. But, you know, that's down to Bridget Phillipson. So hopefully.
I'm not being told that I need to wrap up, so I think I can take a couple more. I've got a lady here, and then one here, and then one here, and I think we'll have to wrap up.
Hi, yeah. When I first came to Leeds about 3 years ago, there was a really good infrastructure, burgeoning infrastructure around ESF, European Social Fund, and SRB, Social Generation Budget. So I might be wrong. I think all of that infrastructure is coming to fruition. Now we're seeing the beautiful fruits and we're picking up the low-hanging fruit. So what is, I suppose it's two questions really. What's coming up that builds big infrastructure support for not just the creative industry, but the BCFS, the whole wider volume community sector? And how do we harness that? How do we know from, like, say that CPP are going to look at it, maybe moving into the sector and looking at social return on investment? But with those two big infrastructure big things that are gone, what comes in its place, so that we have our 20-year plan, so we're not short term.
Yeah.
This has to be a finance is great, but it's so hard to plan. We're still talking about 3-year plan. How do you plan our 20-year vision and our 50-year plan? It's easy to see what happened 20 years ago.
Yeah, we don't want to be in the rearview mirror. We want to be looking to the future. But I'd like to say actually some of that work has already happened with devolution. That the culture committee has got £11.5 million. You know, we're pump priming the creative industries in the sector. But also to your point about long term, for the first time, local authority leaders together with me have created a West Yorkshire plan for 2040. And our plan, looking to the future, is absolutely about culture at the heart of everything we do. So I would hope that you'd find some reassurance that we can't just stagger from one funding round to another. But just to the point about European funds, you know, the Shared Prosperity Fund, that feels like such a small amount of money because we've got 2/3 of what we used to get, and we're expected to slice it a multiple of ways. And also the way that you can access the money, I think there are 47 different bits of evidence you need to deliver for each bit of your tendering. That's no way to do it. And, you know, people outside of our region making decisions, it's just wrong. So I hope you find some reassurance in the plan, because you're absolutely right. We can't stagger from one funding round to another.
And I think places having to compete with one
Oh,
another
the
as
beauty
well.
contest, ridiculous. Get rid of the beauty contest. I mean, Bradford spent £600,000 getting a bid for a regeneration of Vauxhall Stadium. Just amazing bid for South Bradford for the levelling up money, and they didn't get it. I mean, what a waste of money. An absolute tragedy. Just get rid of these funding rounds, beauty contests. That's why we've worked really hard to get a level 4 devolution deal, which is like a bridge that will take us to a single settlement. So that's what we want. We want the same. We don't want to wait till the Trailblazers have been a pilot and they've got, you know, evidence. We are a mature combined authority. Give us that single settlement. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, well said. I think we have one at the back here. Lady at the back.
It was just very briefly just to put back on that whole thing around children and young people, and just to flag that actually there is a mechanism within West Yorkshire supporting work children and young people called cultural education partnerships. There's one in every local authority in West Yorkshire, and actually those partnerships they've established their partnerships with local authority, the arts and cultural sector, schools, FE, anything. However, you know, they came about through a challenge that was issued by Arts Council. However, we're really struggling to maintain ourselves moving forward. But all I would say is we're there, we're poised, we're ready, but we need some support, because at the moment we're really struggling. But that mechanism is there. And then the other thing, just very briefly, is I was part of a data collection working group where they're meeting this afternoon, and there's some really exciting work going across the region around that data collection. But currently, does it include children, people, and families? Personally, I think that's what it is. My understanding is it starts at 60 plus in terms of that data collection. So I have a little bit of a plea there, which is that maybe to see how do we pull in that data across the combined authority around children, young people, and families.
Thank you. So it sounds like we need to sort of get together, don't we, and bring all the partnership working folk around a table to have a conversation. And we'll take that away about the data. But also just on young people, it might be worth knowing for partners, the Mayor's Safer Communities Fund is proceeds of crime money. So the last round, we had £1 million. We've given it out in grants of £8,000, and there's some grants where there's a partnership working of more than that. And last night we had the youth commission met, and we had some examples of the projects that the Mayor's Safer Communities Fund has funded. 2 of them were theatre projects. one about coercive relationships, and one about knife crime. But there are lots of ways to maybe pivot some of the work that you're doing that maybe will then chime with some other funding streams, because there's nothing nicer than using the money taken from criminals and putting it back into the community who are harmed by crime. So if you've got something that is about safety of women and girls, about knife crime, or about, like I say, about relationships, anything like that, have a look at the website and you might be eligible.
Brilliant, thank you. I think I'm being told that I need to wrap it up there, but sorry for anybody who had any questions, but we do have wine in this back room, I think, where you came through. I think Tracy can stay with us for a little bit
Yeah.
longer.